It was actually probably the most interesting Black Friday.
We got Richie Mashiko on today.
No hiccups, by far our smoothest Black Friday, Cyber Monday, which was like a night and day difference over 2024.
The brands that struggled at scale are just the ones that never really figured out how to diversify their media mix.
Meta can probably squat 400 pounds, but linear TV can run a 10 mile at a 630 pace.
If you get the economics right and you get the LTV right, it might make sense to try to blitz scale.
We ended the entire week up over 30% year over year. I finished 2024, and I forget how we discussed it on the pod, but I remember telling the executive team, I was like, dude, I don't know how many more of these I can do.
All right, let's do it. We got Richie Mashiko on today. So a little background story. Me and Richie's like the first person I knew in Ecom, and it actually goes way back before then. So like when him and I were both kind of doing our own digital marketing hustles in college, I was doing like lead generation for local like lead gen companies in Madison, Wisconsin. So we were working with like dental offices and like real estate agents. We were doing lead gen. We were also doing just like branding stuff for local businesses that like had no digital presence. So we'd like create some branding for them, like build an Instagram page, start putting out content. We would even do like locally geo-targeted, like we were working with some restaurants. So we would do like, hey, there's a taco happy hour going on. Like you just have to screenshot this ad and show it to the person at the front cashier register. So we were doing stuff like that when we were first getting going. Richie, can you explain what you were doing? Because we got connected through the guy that I was working with through the lead gen stuff. Can you explain what you were doing with like that? I forget was his name Curtis?
Yeah, honestly, we were doing a bunch of stuff, and honestly, like when we met through our buddy Gabe, right? That's who I went to high school with, and that's who you met in college. Was kind of actually like the first exposure to like some of the digital ad stuff. And I think how it went was we thought we could, get some of the dental offices or some of like the clients to work you guys' magic with Facebook ads back in the 2017, 2018 days. And that's the origin story. Or that's part of the origin story, at least.
That's the first part of it. So that's how we got connected. Nothing really came of the whole like lead gen stuff you were doing and we were doing. Like we got a few more clients and I think we worked together a little bit, but fast forward like I guess a year and a half, maybe 2 years from then, I started working at Homestead and Richie slides into the LinkedIn DMs. He's like, yo, I just came on to this brand called She's Birdie. Like here's where we're currently at. And this new brand, She's Birdie, had definitely found product market fit and had like a really uniquely positioned product and solution that they were offering to this problem. And yeah, so long story short, Homestead ended up working with She's Birdie for like a year. And that 12 months was like, that at least that was my first experience with like hockey stick growth for an ecom brand, like really leaning into Facebook ads, landing pages, email and SMS marketing, like all the classic levers that can really propel an ecom brand forward. That was like back in the day when UGC was like the new unlock to drop into an account. And we were just like peppering the account with tons of review videos. And yeah, that was a pretty crazy time and my very memorable ecom moment for me, Richie.
I know it was, I remember those were the good old days. I mean, it's good old days now, but, remember you taking it from like 150K a month and took it to like $1 million a month in like 2 months, and it was a fun ride. Connor's the reason why I'm here.
I remember I spent $100,000 on Facebook ads in a day. I was like, man, this is crazy.
That's awesome. I'm glad you guys made going from friends to friend relationship to client relationship goes much better when you scale them from 150K to $1 million a month. That could go one of two ways.
The friendship sticks around when the growth is good. All right, we got a really fun episode today with Richie Mashiko. We are first going to do a little bit of a recap on how Black Friday, Cyber Monday went, and then we're going to go into Richie's zone of genius, which is doing forecasting for e-commerce brands and how to affect that forecast. Thank you to the sponsors, Motion, Aftercell, Prescient, Rich Panel, and House. And if you're liking the show, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share with your marketing friends.
Hey, Connor, I don't know if you know this, but there's a lot of talk about creative diversity right now on all platforms. We've been talking about it a lot. Andromeda, I don't know if you heard about that. It's apparently a Greek legend, a Greek myth. But I believe it is something that Meta has done that obviously I'm kidding, but everybody's talking about creative diversity. Everybody's talking about Andromeda and how the game has changed. We are all focused on it. I think there's not a D2C operator who does not know it at this point and how important it is. And being able to test, measure, do creative diversity, get a high volume of diverse assets is really the name of the game. And I'm super excited because Motion has just rolled out AI tagging, which helps to simplify it. As our volumes go in, diversity is going up. We have more different types of styles. I know you're a big naming convention guy. I know that you think they're the heart and soul of DTC brand, but another casualty of the AI era, Motion now has AI tagging, which simplifies all of your reporting, automatically tags stuff, just makes it easier to splice data. I know you were just saying, actually, you sent it to your team. I sent it to my team. What are your thoughts on AI tagging so far?
Yeah, no, totally. And Motion's premier sponsor, we're supposed to say nice things, but legitimately, as soon as I got the video from them, because we got early access, sent it right to my team. I'm like, this is the way to go. It makes the comparative analytics just so much simpler. I was just looking at it this morning, bucketing between UGC, lifestyle photo with text, product photo with text, all these different breakdowns that we used to have to labor over to tag and automate and then break down the reports by those dimensions. It's all kind of working out of the box. So, you got it totally right. We were talking about creative diversity all the time. Producing that, I think, is a big challenge for brands right now. Analyzing that, just as big of an issue. And Motion's AI tagging system is a great solution for it. So if you want to check it out, go to motionapp.com and let them know that the marketing operator sent you.
Cool. So we finally made it through Cyber 5. We're excited to talk about that a lot today. Before we do that, I got to do a quick plug to Hexclad's new YouTube series that just dropped. Our content team has been working on this for...
Whoa. Undisclosed sponsorship here. I had no idea.
We got to rack our views up, guys. We got to rack them up. No, seriously though, like, I've talked about Huckberry a lot. We've talked about Yeti Presents a lot. They were very much a muse for this content series. These are like 12 to 16 minute, short films basically, and it's called Open to Close. It's basically covering like what actually happens operationally in a Michelin star restaurant from the moment it opens to the moment it closes, and it goes like timestamp by timestamp. I think it's really well done. I think our head of content, Matt Ducker, and our content team just absolutely crushed it. Already up to 136,000 views. We just launched it Monday, and then we did an email for it yesterday. So if you haven't checked it out yet, go check it out. It's pretty dang cool. And we got, I think, 4 more episodes launching in this first season.
How often are they going to come out?
I think weekly. I think we're going to release one a week for the next like 4 or 5 weeks, is my understanding. They're already fully launched on Tubi. So our partner Fox has a streaming platform or network called Tubi. So if you want to go watch all of them, you can go watch them all on Tubi right now. And then on YouTube, we'll roll them out week over week, I think.
And it's called Hexclad Presents?
The brand is like Hexclad Presents, and then the series is called Open to Close.
Got it. Oh, yep. Dude, it sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, appreciate it. So, all right, let's get into it. Let's talk Cyber 5. I guess before we get into the actual like results that we saw for each of our brands, just overall execution wise, I know at Hexclad, I felt this was our 3rd BFCM with a full internal team. My 4th BFCM at Hexclad in its entirety since I've been working on the brand. Definitely our best plan, smoothest rollout. I feel like the only things we really had to make adjustments on were some budget decisions, which in the grand scheme of things were like pretty small decisions. And then just like, hey, we're moving too little of this upsell. Like, let's change the UX, or like, let's lower the price, or we stocked out of this upsell. Let's get it off the product page, or we stocked out of this product. Let's put it back in stock. So just kind of your normal like demand planning changes and your normal budget conversations. But other than that, there was like no broken ads, no broken web page links. Shopify's backend went down for a little bit in the morning on Cyber Monday, on desktop at least. So that was like the most scary thing that happened. But I felt really good about, yeah.
PostScript admin down on Friday.
Oh, PostScript. Yeah, PostScript went down. What was the deal with that? Our beloved PostScript. Everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah, I was saying, I actually thought they handled it really well. It was one of those, they didn't have an issue with, at least from my understanding, deliverability. Like we had scheduled sends that were going out. It was just accessing the back end that you had issues with for a couple hours. But I thought they handled it well. Alex Beller holding it down on Twitter. Our reps were super responsive. It was back up in an hour and a half or so. So no harm, no foul from my perspective.
And they're so forward and upfront with everything they do. Like I didn't see Beller's post, but I'm sure he like recorded a video like very articulately like explaining what happened. Actually, you reminded me, we did have one issue. We decided to layer in one more plain text on I think it was Friday. We decided to layer in one more plain text, and like I was just going in Klaviyo and looking at it. And I'm like, there's no way we only serve this to like 2,000 people or 10. I forget what the number was. It was really low. And we went back and realized there was an issue with one of our Klaviyo emails we sent out, but we just resent it and it was fine. So that was not much of a hiccup. Anything else on your guys' end? Any hiccups that you had to work through during the actual Cyber 5 weekend?
I have a quick question on the plain text, actually. What was the data that you looked at that made your team decide to plan, like to schedule another email or to create another email to send?
We realized midday that and it was like our net, like the total number of campaigns we sent throughout the whole weekend was the same. Like we had one more scheduled for Saturday and one less scheduled for Black Friday. We just decided we wanted to comp Black Friday last year exactly. So we just peppered a really simple plain text email in real quick. But it wasn't anything more than that.
Totally. Richie, how was your experience?
It was actually probably the most interesting Black Friday. We've been doing it for like 6 years. I think I don't know how much of the story Connor's filled you in on, but basically the brand Birdie kind of was in a pretty distressed state in the beginning of the year. And one of those things is we owed Facebook a lot of money. So I essentially took like over day-to-day operational control in May, and we literally started running ads in October. So for the first 9 months of the year, we weren't running ads. And had no idea what to expect on Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend. But probably like 2-3 weeks ago, things started to work again. Gratefully, and obviously we didn't reach the scale that we had that we did in previous years, but it was really profitable, and for the situation the business is in, it's good. It was good. No technical thing. I mean, there was a Shopify thing, but we probably didn't. Our operation is definitely not as complex as your guys. So I'll say that, but everything was smooth.
So you just launched ads again in, you said October?
October.
Got it. So you were really going efficiency, like really leaning on the efficiency end of the efficiency versus revenue spectrum in the last year.
Yeah, 100%. It was very interesting. Like we were spending like literally like maybe like $100 to $500 a day in October. When historically we spent in October $10,000 to $20,000 a day.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting.
Well, I'm excited to see what 2026 has in store for you guys, because it sounds like you're kind of at that point where you might be able to start unleashing some more top of funnel and media deployment again.
It feels like deja vu when we were working with you guys at the beginning.
Yeah.
Remember? So
yeah,
another shot at growth.
The circle of life.
Yeah, seriously. The Ecom,
you get to run it all back, Richie. Go from 100K a month to $1 million a month again.
You get to learn from the mistakes. So, yeah.
Connor, how did it go for you guys? Any hiccups?
No hiccups. No, actually, I mean, look, I feel like I need to knock on wood despite us being past the period. By far our smoothest Black Friday, Cyber Monday, which was like a night and day difference over 2024. I finished 2024, and I forget how we discussed it on the pod, but I remember telling the team, the executive team, I was like, dude, I don't know how many more of these I can do. I'm so tired. It was like extremely stressful. We like didn't get a lot of growth. We were really focused on efficiency. And because of that, it just felt like every every dollar we spent had to be like so scrutinized over because we were really trying to thread a needle. This was 2024. Last week we had best week ever. We had our biggest Black Friday. We had our biggest week. November ended up being our biggest month all time. I've got a couple like maybe observations or points that I would love your guys' perspective on. One, we saw a really big. We launched we call them deal drops, but like our Black Friday exclusive offers on Wednesday, 9 a.m. And we saw 50% growth on Wednesday and Thursday. So we come into the weekend like massively up. Black Friday wasn't quite there, but we improved MER year over year. And then Saturday and Sunday, solid growth. And then Cyber Monday was actually our softest day. So it was like kind of front loaded in a way. But we ended the entire week up over 30% year over year. And what we're in the process of doing now is like, I think there are some like indicators of success. Obviously the revenue's one. And I'll also just for the group, because I think this is kind of interesting. It was really our EDC business. So our like core wallet business where we were getting all of our growth, which is not always the case. For the last couple of years, it's been more moderate growth in the wallet business and then getting a lot of growth, 50, 60% in rings and travel and things like that. This was not the case here. We saw wallets absolutely rip for most of the month of November. International also performed really well for us. So revenue is obviously an indicator of success. The other one is brand queries. We're up 30% year over year, week of Black Friday, which is, I think, extremely hard to do. It was obviously last year's Black Friday was the most amount of people ever to have searched for Ridge Wallet on that day. We were able to beat that by 30%. And then the other one that I think is interesting is we saw Meta spend targeting men perform significantly better year over year to the point that it was actually equal to women's spend. So I don't know if you guys look at that sort of thing, but typically for the month of November, we spend quite a bit more on women than men. So the fact that we were able to get the rows we needed to spend basically 50-50 split between the two over Black Friday, I think is another indicator of success. And then what we're doing, or like what we're in the process of doing now is like, okay, if we think of those as being wins, what did we do from a strategic perspective that contributes to those or led to those? What are those a byproduct of? And one is a media mix, which Connor, I know you had a point on, but like we're spending more on TV, on podcasts. We're spending like hundreds of % more on YouTube year over year. I think that's the sort of thing that drives us increased brand queries. I think you were listing media mix as a win for you guys as well.
Yes, I think I was talking a lot about this and with my internal team, and I think I brought it up on the podcast. Like we just have such a unique business model where like the performance of our business is just so concentrated, and like you can use baseline revenue leading into this moment as like a leading indicator of where this peak moment's going to go. Mm-hmm. But it's a tough thing because our feedback loop's actually really long. You know, right. Like I don't really get the full feedback until the 5 days of Cyber 5 have happened. We made a big emphasis. One of our biggest rocks, our most important rock or initiative of the year was like, we got to be less on Meta and more in other channels because we just weren't reaching new people through Meta. It's like, I think our rolling reach in the back half of the year, aside from November, which was when it was its highest, was like 10% or like 10% new people being reached of all of our impressions. So we diversified our media mix all year long, more linear TV, more CTV, more YouTube, more non-purchase conversion campaigns within Meta, which I want to talk about because that was a huge win for us. But I talked a lot about using this, like, I call them like funnel metrics, like unique users, new unique users, returning users. And then some of the metrics I was following along with the most were how many product page views have we got? And how many active cart users have we got? And what's the comp on that year over year? And what I was seeing, like leading into this Cyber 5 moment, was that those two metrics, product page views and active cart users, the % growth on those two KPIs was totally outpacing our revenue growth. And it's not that our revenue growth was bad in like August, September, October. It was still solid revenue growth. But that I was seeing that and tracking that all like for the 4 months leading into this moment. And like, I was very bullish on the strength or health of our funnel because of that. I'm like, people are looking at products, they're building carts at an enhanced rate compared to where our revenue is growing. And I thought that was a really good indication that we were just getting more highly qualified people to our site, which ultimately comes back to our media mix. And like, what I'm realizing at Hexclad scale is traffic and like funnel health metrics are really, really important KPIs to continue to grow. Like if we're flat on sessions or like flat on product views or active cart users, we're gonna have a really hard time growing. And we saw great repeat, like cohort based, retention performance during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, but it's still acquisition that is like really moving the needle for us. So, I think like ultimately I was able to sort of confirm that those like funnel health metrics I was tracking all year long, like are the right metrics to be looking at. I'm going to actually go in and look at our brand search queries today. I was waiting for Cyber Monday to like fully and like waiting for that data to get passed back into Marathon, but I'm really excited to go in there. I'm imagining we have like massive growth in our branded search queries over that Cyber 5 weekend. So that was a big one for us, was like diversifying the media mix all year long really paid off.
Right.
Also just like diversification in general, right? Like we invested more into different types of creators. We've, got the most impressions in tag social content, we hit over 1 billion like a few months ago, like insane impression arbitrage in social, which is also like following this diversification trend. I think the media mix was like the biggest variable that helped us drive the performance we saw, but it was just really cool to see that view content even during, which we look at that as like a funnel building campaign, not a like run this rampant during an actual like sales event. So that was really cool. We also put a ton of budget into these flex ads. I don't know if you guys have been doing a lot of that, but we are seeing huge scale, which it seems to me is like Meta's new version of like DCTs, dynamic creative tests, that we used to run a ton of back in the day. But we're dropping in, we're basically grouping these flex ads by concept. So it's like all the ads in it are Gordon whitelisting, or all the ads in it are like static sale ads. And we're like, I was just looking at just by like top spending ads. I think like 5 of our top 10 spending ads were that like flex ads format, or like 3 of our top 5 or something. It was crazy. So those are 3 of the big variables I've noticed immediately that were helping us.
I want to jump back quickly to the view content component, because I saw you put that in the notes and I looked up ours. We didn't see 7x the average performance. We were above target, and it ended up being about 10% of our meta budget, which is like, we had a number of discussions, and we've also ran a bunch of holdouts, and we went down the rabbit hole at Ridge of optimizing for view content last Q4 when I saw it outperforming our purchase optimized campaigns. So I do think there is a strategy, at least from my perspective, of like, if you want to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a day, it just like makes sense to be expanding your account in that way. During Black Friday specifically, I think there's enough intent out there that even not optimizing for purchases will lead to decent direct response results, right? So I'm super with you there. Didn't quite see the success that you guys did, but 10% of budget above target, like we're super happy with.
That's a huge, I mean, I don't know what it was not 10% of our total budget. It was definitely under that.
10% of our meta budget.
Right.
Which
yeah. Saying
you're going to get down to like sub 6% or something. You could do the rough math there. But so cool. We both attribute media mix being a win, largely leading up to Black Friday, but then also week of, particularly with the view content stuff.
So I remember like right around Christmas time, when most people normal people were like off, taking their time, chilling with family. I was like looking through our P&L, our budget for next year, and I was like, how are we going to save money? And one of the things I did is I leaned on a lot of our partners, and I remember slacking Amit from Rich Panel, and I was like, what can you do? How can you help us? We had just switched to Rich Panel a few months before, went really well. And I told him jokingly, by the way, I want to throw it out there jokingly, that if he could help cut about $500K from our customer service costs, I'd get a Rich Panel tattoo. Well, we did that. You've probably seen a tweet. He did some AI thing of me with a neck tattoo. I'm not going to do it. Sorry, Amit, but I will talk about how much I love Rich Panel, how much Amit has helped us. So we had 18 support agents before. It was a lot, and it just was not scalable. We had so many people. We had this like old legacy software. It was slow, it was broken, it was expensive, and it just took too many people to operate. So we not only made the switch, but Amit and his team really helped us. Now we have 8 people, and we have a much better CSAT score. Our numbers are way better. Our response times are way quicker. We're leveraging a lot of automation, a lot of AI, but again, it has not hurt customer experience. We track, and I get a weekly report of our CSAT, of all of our stuff, of our NPS, and it's going up because we're actually able to get back to people, give people better answers. The automation learns from our best agents, so it just continually is getting better. If we switched to Rich Panel about 2 weeks before Black Friday, might be a crazy thing to do, but it was super easy. We came out of Black Friday for the first time in 3 years with no ticket backlog. The software and support has blown us away. I highly recommend you switch. If you do it and they save you a lot of money, you should probably get a tattoo, but it's not something my wife would let me get away with. But yeah, if you're running an e-commerce brand, I highly recommend you switch to Richpanel. You'll be able to leverage their software, save money on software costs, which is great, while saving a significant amount of money on personnel costs. So if you want to go into Q4 with a leaner, smarter support setup and come out of there without this crazy ticket backlog and just make your CX team happier, go to richpanel.com/demo. Tell them Cody from Marketing Operator sent you and tell them you're ready to get a tattoo.
Richie, I'm curious your perspective on this, just whether it's She's Birdie or other brands you've worked with. How have they been approaching?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting listening to you guys talk. So for context, I work as really more of like a finance consultant. Do you have like kind of the marketing and growth background? But I kind of work with brands and kind of fall in two camps, right? Call like the sub 30, who's like their media mix is basically Facebook, right? Or Meta, whatever you want to call it. And then you have, and then there's a category of brands that I work with that are, call it like plus 50, trending towards 9, maybe have reached 9. And I think the thing that I noticed over Black Friday, it's a really similar story to what you guys are saying for like that cohort of brands that is larger in scale. The ones that really invested in like top of funnel impressions and looking kind of like at those full, like what you call the full funnel metrics, right, Connor? Thinking about how many impressions are we getting a month? Not just thinking of one day what the ROAS is like on a day by day basis. Those brands won. The brands that struggled at scale are just the ones that never really figured out how to diversify their media mix. I think maybe because there could be like a lot of reasons for that, just from my perspective. One could be just like the way that the business is made up from like a unit economic or a customer purchasing behavior. Maybe they couldn't figure out how to justify looking at taking a longer term view when maybe we're looking at the right metrics, right? Because we're just looking at conversion the day of. So I think in that upper cohort of brands that you guys are obviously in, like media mix diversification one. I think on the smaller end, call like the sub 30 million.
I want to add a note on that point before you move on from it, because I fully agree with what you just said. I've talked about this in the past, but like we what we call this at HexCloud is like analytical rigor. It's like every single thing you're gonna do you need to know how you're gonna measure it and like what success or losing looks like, and it's gonna be different for every single thing you did. Because to your point, if you want to run a bunch of linear TV campaigns and you're only gonna think about it the same way that you measure, let's say Meta, like we're going to do a short URL and have like a Northbeam UTM. We're going to measure it that way. It's like, you're never going to see, you're not measuring it the right way. So if you go into it with like the wrong analytical mindset or model, you're never going to invest in those channels where like we look at linear TV very different than we look at Meta, very different than we look at influencer. And like we have different measurements or different definitions of what like winning on each channel looks like. And that's allowed us to invest in the top of the funnel. If we didn't think that way, we would be like, oh, let's just put more into Meta, more into search, and our funnel will be really dried up, which I think is kind of what you were saying is like, brands aren't investing there, I think, because they're not doing the work ahead of time to be like, okay, what is this serving our business? Right. And like, what are the KPIs that we can use to measure it? For like linear TV, it's like, we'll look at hour over hour lift in sessions and compare that to other linear TV spots. And like, that's a pretty good way to make the right decisions, I'd say 85% of the time. So I just wanted to add that because I think that's like an amazing point that you just made.
Well, it's also a different muscle, right? Like a lot of these brands, and I mean, you guys were there at the start, a long time ago, right? Where you're just so used to looking in like Meta's dashboard or Facebook's dashboard and right, saying, hey, what's like my CPA? What is like my ROAS? It's a really different, it's like you could be fit, right? But fit from like a bodybuilder perspective is a lot different than like a marathon runner. Right. And I kind of think of
that's a great comparison. You're totally right.
And as like a marketer or a brand operator, owner, founder, whatever, it's about evolving, right? as you want to scale. I see a lot of brands that I think this is a good. That was a great point, Connor. Like, there's really a lot of brands that I've worked with and I've seen that are like, our Facebook spend isn't working. Let's try linear TV and see if that gets a better, like, instant impact on revenue. And I'm like, well, it's not. Probably not. And when you're just measuring like something like that against, the wrong KPIs, it just doesn't work. Like the one brand that I think did really well, they're just focused on how do you arbitrage like views and think of it from a CPM impression. That's like a really like, basic thing. But that's like an example of a brand that I think won that had a really good Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
I love the fitness. I love the fitness analogy. Yeah, Meta can probably squat 400 pounds, but linear TV can run a 10 mile at a 6:30 pace. You're totally right, and that's you could basically connect that to how you measure them, right? Like that's a really good way to think about it.
Yeah, it's like evolving your athlete type, I guess. And then I think for like the sub, call it 30 million brand, $1 million brand, that's definitely where like Birdie fit in. And I have a handful of clients on that end. Acquisition was like pretty tough, especially like the brands that are really acquisition focused, they don't have LTV, so like electronics, like not super strong. The brands that I saw win from like that lower end of the spectrum was, well, one, like a lot of the repeat, like apparel, skincare, beauty, etc. And those brands that typically didn't run too many offers during the whole year, there's kind of, when, you do run that offer and you have like a decent sized email list, an SMS list, just very simple tactics, right? It worked. So that's kind of my observation from the weekend.
Yeah. I want to also offer like if you're that brand that's kind of like in that in-between stage where you're like, let's say you're a low 8-figure brand, you got there on Meta really, and maybe some search, maybe some Amazon, and you're trying to decide like, do we diversify? Talk to your Meta rep about running a rolling reach report. If 50% or 40% of your impressions in Meta are still net new, I would say do not diversify. Like keep investing in the channel that got you there. If on the contrary, you're like, oh crap, only 10% of our impressions are net new, I think that's a great data point to go and diversify off of. Would you agree with that, Connor?
Mostly.
Let's hear the contrarian.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the rolling reach report is naturally going to go down over time. So there's periods of time where we're nowhere near reaching. Like if we're doing a 2-year rolling reach report, we've spent so much money over the last 2 years, like we just can't possibly be reaching 10% new people every single month.
Right.
So you have to keep that in mind. It's just naturally, like the way that it's calculated, it always naturally declines. And then the other point that I would make is, and I've made this one before, but there's an exercise to do around reaching the same people in a new way. I bring up like we were running this like Joe Rogan inspired ad, and we saw a really high click-through rate. We saw a really high percent of visits, and I thought, oh, this must be reaching new people. And you could also calculate the rolling reach report to see like just that ad, how many new people is it reaching? And it was like none. Like it was like 95% of people who'd seen that ad had seen our ads previously. It was just that we were reaching them in a new way when we're earning a click from someone who is already familiar with us theoretically. So you have to go through that exercise too and understand where you are as a brand. Is it literally you're doing everything you possibly can and it's just a matter of reaching new people, or do you actually have to be more experimental in how you're speaking to the people who you've already reached? So those would be my couple caveats.
Yeah, 100%. That makes sense.
I know we want to hit forecasting while Richie's here, but I've got just a couple other points I'd love to hit. One, for wins from Black Friday, I've never seen results like this. We saw incredibly good meta performance, and I'd be curious on your take on this, Connor. We saw CPMs down 20% year over year. Click-through rates up. That means CPC was down 27%, and conversion rate and AOV were basically the same. Why do you think Zuckerberg and the ad gods blessed Ridge the week of Black Friday?
I'm gonna look up our dates right now. We all like our traffic was way cheaper. I know our engagement was up because our ads were just better. Let me look at our CPMs real quick.
So that's like, so just to talk through it, People always say, if you have better content, if it gets better engagement, you're rewarded in the algorithm and you could reduce CPMs, like technically. I've always been so skeptical of that. Feels like as soon as ads get really good engagement and good conversion rates, you actually just get charged a higher CPM because Meta, because you can bid more in the auction effectively, and you can scale more at a higher rate. So I've never really seen results. What I will caveat is Meta, and for those who've been listening to the podcast for a long time, Meta was absolutely garbage for us last Black Friday. It had basically never been a smaller percentage of our spend 2024. Week of Black Friday. So we're comping like the worst performance we'd ever seen, but we just saw fantastic results.
Yeah. So our CPMs were up a little bit, not much, $1.50, which is 5.5%. But our outbound click-through rate was up 50%, 54%.
Totally.
So our cost per click was way down because of that, which I think it's hard to suss out like how much of each variable drove that increase in engagement. I think part of it is probably the diversification of media all year long. So the audience that we were serving meta ads to was just like a really juiced audience that like was warm already. Also our creative, just like purely qualitatively speaking, is like way better, way more engaging, I think. So I think both those things are driving it, but we were thrilled with Meta performance. Our ROAS is up 27% in platform. That was about what we saw in North Beam as well. But we basically spent flat, but saw 27% higher attributable revenue. So we thought that was a pretty big win.
It's fantastic. Yeah. So and so there's obviously some point around maybe it is the media mix and like people are more aware, so they're clicking through at a higher rate. Maybe the content's better. Around the lower CPMs, there is a discussion to have around like the industry at large. It's like, did people reduce budgets year over year? Were they taking profit at a higher rate? Tariffs are more of a factor. People are running higher COGS. Maybe they have inventory. Maybe they have less inventory. So there's some sort of discussion to have there where maybe just the amount of people bidding in the auction and how aggressively they're doing it is just categorically different year over year. And that's like, because even a 5% increase in CPMs year over year is like, let's basically flat. And I can't imagine you guys usually see that. I just feel like CPMs typically go up 10, 15, 20% or whatever. So flat or for us down 20% is just like makes our life so much easier, especially if people are converting at the same rate.
Dude, and also like, not to mention, we also ran the view content stuff that had a much lower CPM, obviously. So like our purchase conversion CPMs were actually probably even much higher than that, actually. Richie, were you gonna say something?
You remember there was just a time on Twitter, and I don't know how long ago this was, where there was like a narrative like that CPMs didn't matter.
I do remember that.
Yeah, people like I do get the point of like CPMs don't matter in the sense that like there are times where you don't have other decisions to make. It's like look, you just have to make Meta work, and Meta is going to give you a certain CPM,
right?
Like, I think that's where that school of thought comes from. But ultimately, like, I am so not a subscriber to that ideology. Like, even if I have another point here, AppLovin actually performed really well for us year over year. The ROAS was about flat. CPMs were up 70%. We were reaching half as many people, almost half as many people for every dollar spent. We were really early to AppLovin last year. We had really low CPMs. It was a fantastic channel for us, kind of saved our Black Friday. But if CPMs are up 70%, I told the team, I'm like, we saw this going into the period. It was higher earlier. In October, it was up like 120%. We just can't spend there. We can't possibly expect to be able to spend the same year over year if we're getting half the impressions per dollar spent. So CPMs matter in that sense. It's like, other channels could have better relative performance if their CPMs are only up 10%, or in the case of Meta, down 20%.
Connor, I agree with you. CPMs in the context of the entire business, like macro, absolutely matter. Like if your CPMs double year over year and you're reaching half the people, like that absolutely matters. Where I subscribe to the CPMs don't matter is like some people will hear the CPM from a channel and like it'll be a non-starter for them. Like, oh, the CPM's $30 or $40. Like, oh no, I'm like, that's where I'm like, whoa, slow down, because not all audiences are created equal. I will pay a $40 CPM if I'm tapping into an insanely high intent audience that I'm not already getting. And like, that's like the Amazon, like a lot of the Amazon ad units that we're starting to buy now, like these are $30 CPMs, $40 CPMs sometimes. I'm like, okay, that's a little high, but I also know that we've never served Amazon Prime ads before, and I think we probably like inherently, I think Prime members are like affluent people, and like I think our audience is there, and we're probably not hitting them if we're not there. So I'm like, I'll pay a $40 CPM. Of course, the like performance metrics have to back out, but I don't believe in like letting CPMs be a non-starter unless it's like, you know, an organic influencer deal and it's like $120 CPM. I'm like, all right, like I'm not paying you $25,000 to get a $100 CPM. Sorry. Like I'll pay you 25 grand if you can get me a $1 CPM or a $5 CPM. So I think it's kind of like a case by case thing there.
I have another analogy for you real quick, Connor. It's not all ads are created equal, right? Not all audiences are the same. It's like a cow. The fillet and the ribeye are a little bit different than the flank steak. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Or the oxtails. You will pay a little bit of a different price for a different cut. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. That's another. God, you always got the good analogies, Richie. Always got them. I love it.
It's been a thing.
All right, listeners, let's talk about the next couple months. Holiday spending is naturally going to slow down, but sales volume can still remain high as you get through shipping cutoffs, as you get into the new year, and as you crush your Q1 targets. One of our focuses at Ridge will be squeezing more revenue from every customer that we've been acquiring for so long, and that is where Aftersell by Rokt comes in. It's the one-click post-purchase upsell platform trusted by over 40,000 D2C brands, and here's how it works. When someone just bought from you, they're already in buying mode. They trust you, their card's on file. All you do is show them the right offer at the right time with zero friction. No re-entering payment info, no extra pages, just yes, add this, and boom, done. Brands are seeing up to 30% AOV lifts, and when you're running volume during the holidays or into 2026, that can compound fast. And look, Jones Road, Ridge, True Classic, Hexclad, we're not running Aftersell because it's trendy. We're running it because the unit economics work and the data is undeniable. But here's the kicker. Beyond the AOV boost, Aftersell unlocks Rokt monetization suite, pure profit with zero work. Rokt Thanks on your thank you page, 30 to 50 cents in pure profit per order. Rokt Pay Plus, another 20 to 25 cents per order, no impact on conversion. It's found money. So here's what you do. Go to aftersell.com/operators right now, activate Rokt Thanks or Rokt Pay Plus and get the full Aftersell suite for free. Run it, check your numbers, then you can come back and tell us if you want to turn it off, but I already know what you're going to say. All right, I got one other quick point and then one question for you, Connor. The quick point is we discussed this coming into Black Friday. It was called under-discussed Q4 strategies, something like that.
Yes.
And we mentioned how international markets don't have Friday off because they don't have Thanksgiving on the same Thursday that we do. So Black Friday, quote unquote, Black Friday sales are more concentrated in the evening and the weekend. And what we saw in the US was international was only down 35% going into Saturday from Black Friday. So it is, and then for reference, the US, at least for Ridge, was down 60% from Friday to Saturday. That's like more or less what it is every single year. So it's interesting, calling out. We were right. At least at Ridge, we adjusted budgets slightly differently. We were able to better capitalize on the intent that was still there on Saturday. It's a little, I'm taking a victory lap for us.
Yeah, I'm looking at our curve right now. Our curve was pretty much the same. Like I'm looking at the UK curve. Friday was our peak. Then Saturday. Well, the difference between the US and the UK at least is that on Thursday was our third best day. So it was like Black Friday was 1, Cyber Monday was 2, Thursday was the third best day. Saturday and Sunday were actually like slightly better in the UK. So it was like Black Friday was the best. Then Saturday, Sunday were about even, and then Cyber Monday was the second best, and then Thursday, but it was like pretty close. So just like the difference in the curve was like much lower for the UK compared to the US. So just like a same curve, but slightly different distribution of the curve.
Totally. Yeah, 100%. So I just thought that was an interesting point. It's actually for next year, I think we can get even better about more day-to-day pacing adjustments in international markets. The last one that I had, so the way I had this grouped, better media mix, which Meta's a portion of that, TV, podcast, YouTube, like we mentioned, going into the week of Black Friday, I think is important. I had just conversion rate being a win for us. The idea that we're able to drive 40% higher traffic, our conversion rate was about flat. but we drove down our cost per visitor and we spent 40% more. So there's way more people. So I would think our ability to do that came from conversion rate wins. We had a good progress bar implementation to do our gift with purchase. The way we implemented the deal drop, we had like really nice badging and flaring, and it was like kind of intuitive to navigate. So those are all things that I would list as wins. I know you guys have heavily tested your sales page. Anything stick out to you in terms of performance as to what worked and what didn't once people got to the site?
I want to click on your conversion rate note because I fully agree. I spent a lot of time I guess educating our leadership on this.
Mm-hmm.
We saw sessions grow year over year, conversion rate drop. AOV was flat, which I thought the AOV being flat was a big win because this year, more than ever, we've had lower, that was a big thing for me this year. I'm like, we got to give people an easier entry point into the brand while still merchandising these higher value sets more prominently, but with price positioning and just where it lives. So I actually thought AOV being flat was a big win because of that. I thought conversion rate only being down 16%. In spite of sessions being up for 54% was a big win. I'd say on the website, this sale was really a culmination of everything we've been doing leading into this moment all year long. So our big, the last, I'd say in 2023 and 2024, and even this year a little bit, we spent a ton of time testing into the UX of our sale collection page. What is the best experience that has the best RPU? We tested landing pages versus the collection page. So we really feel confident in the UX. And then this year was all about putting more branding and having more specific branding. I've talked a lot about this into these moments, and it looked really good. I don't know if you guys visited our website over the weekend, and now we have our Cyber Monday branding and we're going to roll into our holiday branding, but just there's this subconscious feeling right when you get to our website now when there's a sale going on that something's happening. And I thought that this was one of the best ones that our director has put together yet. The toolkit he put together for all three of these moments was amazing. And I just think it was we just kind of put an exclamation point on all the UX and the branding work we've been putting into these experiences. We're going to do our deck, or our recap deck, and I'm going to go into some of the softer metrics on website, basically the same metrics I was talking about earlier, product views, active cart users, stuff like that, and see how that compared to last year. But I was really happy with the web experience. It's been it's the classic example of we've iterated on the same experience 25 times, instead of building, taking net new swings. It's no, this works. Let's just make it 5% better, 3% better, and just stack those wins. And I really liked how it turned out for Black Friday.
Totally. Okay, and then we'll move on to forecasting from here. One next step we have, and I think this is important, we have some people in the organization who come from more traditional retail backgrounds or buying backgrounds, and they'll really worry about AUR, average unit revenue. And we have examples of our wallet AUR going down. It was down $5 year over year or something, from $95 to $90, something like that. And that might be an indication. Obviously, you're compressing your margins if you do that at the unit level.
Wait, can you explain what AUR is real quick?
AUR is just the average unit revenue. So if we price our wallets at $95, that's not our AUR. People are using discount codes. We're running promos. So if our MSRP is $95, our AUR might be $85 or something because of the different discounts and bundles and things like that. So it's just how much revenue are you actually collecting per unit. And that's obviously people really care about that, especially in more retail, from my experience, more retail based brands and maybe apparel and things like that. So our AUR at the unit level was actually slightly down year over year, but AOV was flat. And what that means is we're actually doing a better job driving up the units per transaction. We're getting more things attached with our PDPs, with our cart, with our post-purchase upsell. So, because I think you bring up a really good point, Connor, if you guys had a lower entry price point, you're obviously dropping AUR. You're allowing people to have a much smaller basket size. And the fact that you were able to maintain AOV means that at some other point, you're getting more items attached. And I think that's a really big win. And I think that's, I talk about this all the time at Ridge, because I think that's it's a massive value. You reduce the entry point, you can get the most price conscious buyer that you're willing to acquire. And then a lot of the time, even the people that would have converted at, 76 instead of 69 are then going and getting, for us, an AirTag cash trap or a tracker card or something. They're spending that money otherwise. You're going to get it at a slightly lower margin, but in our case, we're acquiring so many more customers that's actually extremely valuable. So we've got some work to do to like do a post-mortem on exactly what happened at a basket level year over year. But all signs point to like that being another big win for us.
Yeah. We actually, so Black Friday was flat, but on like leading into the year, our first order AOV has actually been down because of this, but our CAC's been down more than our AOV has been down. So our AMER, like the AMER is the metric we should be optimizing for like acquisition efficiency. It's the same way you look at RPU, not just conversion rate, not just AOV with CRO testing. So I'm like, all right, I don't care that our first order AOV is down $10-15 because our CAC is down proportionally more than that, and our AMER is up. So kind of the same thing that you're talking about, right, Connor?
Totally.
Can I make a quick point? I think that's something that I'm learning right now, just listening to you guys talk. And I'm going to take this away for a lot of like the smaller brands that I work with, is like when you guys talk in like these, in terms of in some of these metrics, right? I really like, hey, like even if conversion rate didn't go up, if it stayed flat, but we increased traffic by 40%, that's a win. Because I think a lot of times, like a lot of these smaller brands are like maybe marketers that are like less sophisticated or less experienced, I don't know what the right word is, would say, hey, well, like the conversion rate didn't go up. So did we really have CRO wins? But if you look at it in the context of like the whole, if the AOV went up and the conversion rate, if the traffic went up and the conversion rate, that's a win. So I think that's like a really interesting note that I'm going to take away from this, just talking to you guys live.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. I had this conversation recently with someone, because you can think about it as like being, everything's like on a diminishing returns curve. And like the entire brand is like, okay, yeah, you are spending X amount of dollars at X amount scale. And if you are able to find, let's say like a huge conversion rate win, you improve conversion rate by 50% or something, what you're effectively doing is putting yourself way further down on that diminishing returns curve. And you can then spend more back up to the point you were at previously. And getting conversion rate back to where it was, originally. Like the goal is not necessarily to maintain this higher conversion rate. It's to maximize contribution dollars. And that could very well come with driving conversion rate back down at a higher scale.
Right. You guys are smart. Okay, so I can say that.
Dude, we should 90 episodes in. I hope we figured out some parts of marketing.
90 episodes and 1 million hours working on ecom brands. Lately, every marketer I talk to says the same thing. The pressure's on, budgets are tight, goals are higher than ever, and I have to prove what's working, not just report it. That's the new reality of marketing. You can't afford to rely on guesses or platform reported results. You need clear, unbiased, causal proof of what's actually driving growth. And that's exactly where House comes in. Incrementality testing is the scientific way to measure true impact. It is the most unbiased way to understand true impact, to see what's moving the needle and what's just noise, so you can reallocate spend based on fact, not faith. All of the marketing operators use House for their incrementality testing at Hexclad, Jones Road Beauty, and Ridge, and it's becoming a core part of the modern measurement stack. House helps you run real experiments across your channels so you can answer questions that actually matter, like which channels are truly driving incremental revenue and which are just taking credit? How much should I really be spending on Meta, Google, and YouTube? What's the halo effect of ads on Amazon or retail sales? And how should I structure my campaign so every dollar goes towards real, measurable impact? What sets House apart is the combination of unbiased, rigorous science and marketer-friendly design. The math under the hood is very complex, but the platform itself is very, very simple. You choose your question, you launch your test in minutes, and you get clear, actionable results you can actually use. Plus, every customer, every brand gets a dedicated measurement strategist. And I will tell you what, the House measurement strategist team is very dialed in. They are very strategic, helping you set these tests up in a way where you're going to get statistically significant results that are actionable. And ultimately, there's someone who has lived in the world of growth and they know how to translate data into strategy, interpret the results, and build a repeatable culture of experimentation across your team. In a world where every marketing dollar is under a microscope, you need to know what's real. Measure what matters with House by going to house.io/operators. That's HAUS.io/operators, and start allocating your budget with confidence. All right, Richie, I want to dig more into kind of like your zone of genius here, because I think I tell this to people all the time, like you have a very unique hybrid, like finance, FP&A, growth marketing skill set. And I love how you're like very much a growth marketer that leads with forecasting and numbers, and then thinking about like what are the levers that we can pull to manipulate these. So I guess just to kick things off, like, can you just give us your background and like explain how you kind of got into this like FP&A for e-commerce role?
Yeah, 100%. So obviously it started, got started in ecom with Birdie. Connor, you play like a huge role in that. Obviously, literally started built the first version of the Birdie website, bought the ads. This is at a time where ad buying was probably like the easiest time in the world. Right in the middle of COVID, CPMs were like super low. Thought like we were like geniuses getting like 4 to 5x return in platform, like the good old days. And then quickly realized, hey, like I'm not necessarily qualified to take this to the next level. And that's where we brought you guys in. And I've always, we all at Birdie always had like a pulse and kind of oversight of like the marketing function. But then it kind of, my role there, kind of turned into more like finance and ops. There's only 3 of us, the 2 founders and myself from like an internal perspective. And the joke that I like to make is, as an Asian, like the spreadsheets make a little bit more sense to me than reviewing ad creatives and knowing hooks and all that kind of stuff. So built the annual forecast at Birdie, figured out what a weekly cash flow forecast was, did all the demand planning, etc. So really like that centered around that part of like the FP&A function at Birdie. And then about a little over 2 years ago, I started working with brands as like a quote unquote like fractional CFO or fractional FP&A resource. And at the beginning of the year, we joined Iris Finance to kind of to function as like managed service FP&A, managed service piece of their software business. So yeah, I've worked with probably over 20 brands at this point in the past couple of years. In that role, it's been really interesting. Anything as small as like $1 million, anything as big as 9 figures. And O'Connor, we did a really fun project together last year. But yeah, it's been really interesting, and I think there is some value in being able to understand how ads work and all that, and how that ties to contribution dollars and EBITDA.
And I can say the forecasting work we did last year together was really helpful. We came in pretty close to what we forecasted, which was tough. HexCloud's a tough one because it's just been so much difference year over year for the last like 3 or 4 years that it's kind of, there's not a ton of consistency and like reliable historical data to model off of. So I was pretty impressed with that. But I want to dig into your process. So Richie, the way that you had like outlined the notes that you sent over was forecasting and making money in an e-com business, which I love. It's very on the nose, and like that's ultimately what everyone's trying to do is like run a profitable business that makes money and create an asset that has a ton of value that maybe they can sell one day. And you broke it down like very simply. And I wanted to like, I'm going to read through the 3 steps you wrote, and then I want to kick it over to you. Cause like, yes, it's like the process is simple, but there's obviously a lot of complexity and a lot of technical skill that goes into each to be able to do it well. So number 1 is just start with clear goals. Number 2 is build a responsible financial forecast. Number 3 is how do you affect the financial performance as a marketer that's not just better revenue and or better efficiency. So could you just like walk us through each step here and like how you go about it, what goes into it, like just starting with like the clear goals piece?
Yeah, 100%. So I think where this comes from, I think we got, maybe Connor, you and I got entered into a market in D2C e-commerce, whatever you want to call our industry, when it was still really sexy to grow top line. There's a lot of, this is like a story that's been told many times, right? A lot of venture dollars, that we think these businesses could behave in a certain way similar to like maybe technology software businesses and get high multiples and figure out how to sell for hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. I think what I've come to appreciate or come to realize that is a path, and I would say like you two sitting here and Cody and all your all the operators, right, sit in that cohort of brands, right? But that is a very, 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 very select, small um cohort, right? Not all brands could to get to ridge scale, could get to hexclad scale, etc. But I do think a lot of these businesses can make money from like a cash flow distribution dividend, whatever you want to call it, perspective. And I think that's really kind of the two fundamental ways that I think of how do you make money in e-commerce business. Are you going to sell your thing at the end, and call it, 3, 5, 10 years, or are you gonna harvest and take out cash along the way? And I think probably 90 to 95% of brands are more function to take cash out along the way. And that's kind of our thesis at Birdie. I think we kind of shifted from, wanting to sell for a lot of money. We experienced growth at a very interesting time in the market. And obviously that growth tapered, but now like kind of the idea is how do we harvest as much cash out along the way. So I think just having that understanding, right, as like the shareholders of the business most of the times, which is the founder, makes forecasting, the direction of forecasting, easier, right? Because forecasting, like if you're like, hey, I want to grow like 300% year on year, I could make you a spreadsheet. I could just click the buttons that make it look like you're gonna do that. But like, is that gonna happen? Like, what's like the likelihood of that happening, right? So I think the more realistic and concrete you are in terms of like your goals, I'm not saying not to be ambitious, right? But just kind of understanding like what the DNA of the business is. Not all people who play basketball are cut out to be LeBron James and make an NBA, right? Like maybe having a really good high school varsity career is like where you're capped out, right? But there's no shame in that, right? You could have some nice moments. So that's what I think like part one.
Do you have any
is
examples, Richie? Like a business that you're like, this is a business that needs to cash flow and be profitable every year versus this is a business that is going to break even or maybe even lose money, but they're going to grow top line aggressively. And like, because of the growth they're seeing year over year for like 5 years plus the top line they hit, like they could sell this thing for a big chunk of money. Like, do you have any examples top of mind where like, this is business example A, this is business example B?
Yeah. So like a lot of it is also defined by TAM, right? So like right now, like the hot thing is a lot of the supplement brands, right? Supplement hydration brands, those are businesses where if you get the economics right and you get the LTV right, returning customer revenue right, it might make sense to, acquire customers at a loss, maybe even operate at a loss, like from a net profit, net income, EBITDA perspective. If you could raise some money, and try to blitz scale, right? That is a category of business that may be able to do that. Now, like Birdie, for example, one of I think kind of the there's a lot of good DNA that makes that business work, right? Really good gross margin. It's a problem that it's a product that you could kind of like really demonstrate visually, like pretty easily. So those are some like the good attributes. It obviously solves a problem. Challenges like returning customer revenue, right? So we are capped at there is an asymptote at which we could acquire customers profitably, right? And we just can't spend past that asymptote, right? So for us, it's about what are the other channels that we could find that are more high margin? Is it Amazon? Is it, small brick and mortar? One thing that we've been doing is going on GMA. For some of the smaller brands, I think it'd be an interesting lift. But yeah, like that's like a business that I think is more suited for cash flow than to get to like $100 million in 2 years. So those are a couple examples.
And for the businesses that you're recommending, like don't blitz scale and they have cash flow every year and they're profitable every year, are you saying like you're not necessarily saying these businesses don't also have the potential to sell? You're just saying like their path to selling is different and like they need to lean into their like EBITDA bottom line to drive that sale price and that multiplier versus like a blitz scale brand with a massive TAM that could reach $1 billion in revenue. Like they're going to be more of like a top line based multiplier versus like a bottom line. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and exactly, and it's like being okay with the outcome, right? Like Hexclad and you guys, if you guys like a good outcome would probably be like multi Bs, right?
Yep.
If there's a brand that could sell for $20 million, right? Even 10, 15, $20 million. If you're the founder, right, and you own a majority of that business, that's still life-changing money.
Yeah.
And maybe that's like what your business could accomplish,
Yep.
So that's kind of the dichotomy. And yeah, you could definitely, there's not saying there's no way to sell a business that is cash flowing, but if you cash flow and then you could sell at the end, that's not necessarily like a terrible outcome. And I think where a lot of businesses die is kind of going along those trying to chase the scale, and then just like the unit economics break and like the profitability breaks, and you can't raise more money, and no one wants to debt finance you anymore. So
yeah,
that's kind of the dichotomy.
Hey, I'd love to own 80% of a company that sells for 20 million. I'd be pumped on that. Black Friday, you're about to crush it. The real job is keeping that momentum going past Black Friday, past holiday, and all the way into next year. Prescient helps brands turn peak season wins into predictable, profitable velocity. Powered by a suite of proprietary machine learning models and a causality-first validation layer, Prescient reveals what actually drove lift. It combines surveys, it combines multi-touch attribution and incrementality, and then it forecasts where your next dollar of media will drive real incremental profit. Top brands like Coterie, Guess, Hexclad, Jones Road Beauty, Mary Roos, and many more are using Prescient to quantify halo effects across Shopify, Amazon retail, so their teams know exactly where to reinvest. So what actual questions can Prescient help you answer? Let's dig into it a little bit. Question number 1, do I need to increase, decrease, or reallocate spend for the shopping season? Prescient shows the optimal media mix to drive the strongest Q4 performance, whether your budget grows or shrinks. Question number 2, where should I put additional Q4 budget? Prescient delivers recommendations based on current BFCM dynamics, your vertical, and your optimal ad spend allocation. Question number 3, can Prescient measure cross-channel effects, especially between Shopify and Amazon? Yes, Prescient uniquely tracks halo effects and ad impact across both platforms, revealing where to dial back and where to double down. This is actually one of the very first problems that Hexclad onboarded with Prescient to solve, is understanding the total impact across both .com and Amazon over ad spend. Prescient's models are benchmarked against $6 billion in ad spend, so the recommendations you are getting aren't just theory. They've actually been tested against billions of real media dollars. And if you're ready to see where your next dollar of media will drive the most profit, visit prescientai.com/operators to forecast your growth with Prescient. All right, let's go into number 2. I think this will be really fun for our audience, which is like fairly tactical and like technical growth marketers. Can you talk about like building a responsible financial forecast? I know you're a big believer in doing bottoms up, like cohort based forecasting, where you're basically predicting repeat revenue and then you're predicting first order revenue. And I think that's like one way to do bottoms up forecasting. You could also do it bottoms up from like a SKU level. I think the orgs that are doing it the best run multiple models, right? They have like the bottoms up cohort, the bottoms up SKU based, and they have a lot of different ways to model revenue. And then they're kind of comparing and contrasting and deciding on the most reasonable, or like stretch, reasonable, maybe a conservative. Can you talk about your process for how you build a responsible financial forecast?
Yeah, 100%. So I think there's 2 ways to approach it, right? One is like, what do we think we could have? What do we think could happen as like a marketer? Really, right? And then 2, what are like the business goals, right? So say like my CEO or a founder came to me and said, hey, I want to generate like $5 million in EBITDA next year, right? Then how I would start thinking about that is like, okay, like what channels are we selling on? What products are we selling on? And essentially what you got to get to is like, what is the contribution, the absolute amount of contribution dollars necessary to be generated on each channel, right? Whether that is like Amazon and your .com business or your wholesale business. You could even get as granular as like particular individual like retail accounts, right? So that's one way to kind of to think about it. But I think the more traditional way from like an ecom perspective is just like this idea of like a cohort forecast. And why I like the cohort forecast is using that as kind of a baseline is it's not just like saying, hey, we want to grow 50% year over year. You know, kind of the what this forecast has is like kind of two pieces: new customer revenue and returning customer revenue, right? Kind of the inputs of the returning customer revenue piece are like the key ones are the retention rate, right? The monthly retention rate, you know, how many new customers you acquire on a monthly basis, and the returning customer AOV, right? So like if you want to affect those things, like how do you affect the retention rate? That's probably like the biggest lever, right? In returning customers, right? Is that new product? Is that, are we going to do like a sub? Are we going to push like subscription, etc.? And then from like the new customer revenue forecast, this is where I think people kind of become overly ambitious, right? So how we like to do new customer forecasts. Oh, and then the other thing is I have templates, and we could put this in the notes if you guys want, so people could use them. So like a payback model and like kind of this revenue forecasting template. But it's really comprised of, you know, what's the ad spend, CAC, and new customer AOV. Those are kind of the main drivers of how I kind of think about it. At a baseline, right? And really like the hardest thing to measure or to forecast out is what is the relationship of increased ad spend and CAC, right? That is kind of like the fundamental struggle. And I feel like a lot of times where people get in trouble from a forecasting perspective is not necessarily being tied into reality in terms of saying, hey, I think I could double my spend. Like this is something we just talked about, right? Looking at how different metrics work together. If I'm going to double my spend, my CAC probably isn't going to stay the same. If you could do that, then you should be tripling spend or quadrupling spend, right? So those are kind of the like the high level way to kind of think about that. And then, you know, you could kind of say like, hey, like what I like about that is like different functions of the organization, right, are responsible for different KPIs. Right. And even like different functions in like a growth marketing team are responsible for those KPIs, whether it's like increasing the spend or reducing CAC, keeping CAC the same, etc. So that's kind of like a high level of you know, how I think about forecasting revenue.
I have a question on returning customer forecasting, and if you have a perspective on this, because what makes total sense is there's going to be some sort of natural repurchasing curve. Right? Like we talk about this quite a bit. I think for almost every brand, the period of time where someone's most likely to repurchase is within the first 30 days. At least like that's from what I've discussed with many people. So for Ridge, it's not much. It's like 4%. And then it degrades from there over time. So you could forecast returning customer revenue with that like cohort curve, whatever you want to call it. But then the biggest thing for Ridge in terms of driving returning customer revenue is with new product launches. So it almost feels like we should have some sort of hybrid model that says, hey, we're going to predict a certain amount of returning customer revenue based on this cohort model. And then, and this is where I'm curious on your perspective, what do we do from there? Are we saying, hey, we have these launches and we're going to like manually input what we think we'll do, what we think the launches will do with the returning customers and then add those together? Or what would you suggest?
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly like the cohort and like the new customer revenue are kind of like the foundation, right, of like what has happened, and what we think is going to happen as business as usual. Now, I do think people kind of get overzealous when they just say, hey, like I'm going to launch a new product. Like if you're going to launch a new SKU at Ridge, right, and say like, hey, like I think this is going to add $10 million to the business next year, right? I still think it's a good exercise to go through how I would think about that is like, oh, our go-to-market strategy for this product is we're going to release it on our .com business in January. We are going to release it on Amazon in March or whatever that time frame is, and it's going to eventually roll out to retail. So you still want to like, and within that, you still kind of want to, again, because I'm going through this with like a brand right now, is let's forecast for like the returning customer piece. We think we're going to send this to X number of email subscribers, Y amount of times. And on average, we think each of those emails is going to generate Z amount of revenue for that product, right? And then it's just kind of forecasting the individual SKUs out like on from a returning customer perspective, and then like how do we think this is going to behave in like an ad account or an acquisition, and then they kind of like stack those things on top of the base forecast.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Richie, how do you? I think this is a good piece to end on, because the hardest part, right, is like, yeah, creating a relationship between ad spend and CAC is like, all right, we're going to scale ad spend. Like we're starting to do this right now, right? Like we're looking at different top line revenue growth, for our US business, and looking in like how much do we need to spend? How much, like if we hypothetically, this is not our target, but hypothetically, if we wanted to grow 50% next year, like how much would we need to spend, and how much would CAC go up? Do you have any like helpful models or ways to guess what CAC's going to do, which is ultimately what we're doing, like what you have to do, right? Is like you're trying to create a model to guess what CAC is going to do. If you spend X, CAC's going to be Y. And you have like a aggressive growth in CAC, a more conservative. Like, how do you think about that? How do you do that?
I think that's like, honestly, that's the hardest question to answer in forecasting, right?
Yeah.
I think it's different for like, I kind of think of it from like those two cohorts of brands that we kind of talked about earlier, right? The larger brands like yourself. And then like on the other end of the spectrum, like call like the sub $20-30 million brands, right? I think for those smaller brands, it's a little bit easier, right? Because kind of the heuristic that I've been using that's been pretty decent, and is like for every like call it like 25 to 30% increase in spend, just from like a meta perspective, like your CAC's going to probably go up 10 to 15%, right? And that framework probably works until you get to like, maybe low 8 figures in spend or high 7 figures in spend. You might reach an asymptote, right? But really, where forecasting is also just not like a financial exercise. And I think why marketers like yourself need to be involved in that, right? Say like, hey, if the business goal is to say like, we want to double or we want to increase our revenue by 25% or whatever the scenario you threw out, Connor, right? You as a marketer would say, hey, this is what needs to be true, right, in order for us to achieve this. This is what our spend and like essentially our customer acquisition would need to be. And then from your end, you're gonna have to go in and say like, hey, like, well, what's my media mix gonna be to get there, right? You're gonna have to figure out how like your like that full funnel works within that like that media spend plan, right? And I think that's where marketers definitely, and I think that was hopefully like a helpful exercise that we did, Connor, was like helping give you guys like giving like the marketing team a seat at the table when it comes to this idea of forecasting, right? Because a lot of like the finance people and like the ops people could, it's easy to throw numbers around, but just kind of having that growth background, like, you just know some things are reasonable and not reasonable. So I would say like having, a lot of your audience, I imagine our marketing people, empowering them to have kind of like a seat at the forecasting table, especially like a larger org like yours, with a really complex like media mix, is super, super important.
Because the classic like trope of marketing dealing with finance is like, hey, we want to grow 25% next year and we don't want to spend any more money. Or even the scenario of like, we want to grow 25% and we only want to spend 25% more. And now let's just like assume we're talking about new customer revenue. So what you're saying is you want to acquire 25 more customers at the exact same CAC. You're not accounting for any sort of diminishing return. It's just like extremely hard, like from a marketing perspective, and just like functionally the way ad platforms work and the way scaling businesses work is that it's extremely difficult to do. So what you're advocating for is just marketers playing a larger role there in helping inform what's reasonable to expect from a CAC perspective.
Yeah, 100%. It's like before digital marketing was a thing, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't just say like, hey, I'm going to sell X many units in Target this year. Like you would have a broker and a salesperson and talk to the buyer at Target to kind of understand like, hey, like what is reasonable, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know why you wouldn't involve like your CMO or your head of growth, et cetera, in that conversation. And then it just, and I think where people get in trouble too is like if you're not in that conversation and you're held to like these like ridiculously like high standard outcomes, like it's just not great. It could cause like a lot of distress in the in the organization.
And if you are tasked with the tall task of, hey, spend the same but drive 25% more revenue, which I don't ever think is like what the case should be, but you have no other like the option of just spend, like make it work in the existing channel, like that's probably not an option. Like you're gonna see your CAC go up. Like your only option, if that's the case, is to switch up your media mix in some way, shape, or form, and to like tap into a new channel that has a marginally lower CAC than what your core channels the year before are getting you. Like there's really no, of course you can like try to improve your core channels and you should do that. But like, I think that's the reason HexCloud has been able to minimize efficiency losses this year and grow top line, is like we took big media mix swings and it's paid off for us in the long run. But like, unless you're willing to do that, you're gonna have a really hard time scaling or like trying to scale revenue on the same amount of spend.
Totally. I mean, but it's also why I brought up the new customer point earlier, where like there are certain types of businesses that growing 25% year over year and spending the same amount is maybe reasonable. If I have a quickly compounding high LTV business, then I can acquire the exact same amount of customers every single day forever, and it will just compound over time. So like one thought would be like, just to exemplify, if the financial forecast is not built thoughtfully, like the adverse effects it could have is if I was forced to drive 25% increase in revenue without spending any more. One, I don't think it could actually be done within the Ridge business, but I would just try to milk the email and SMS list for like everything they're worth.
Yeah.
Run bigger promos, just try to like extract as much value as possible, like squeeze the sponge, empty the tank, and then your business is just going to slowly kind of die from there.
Yeah, it's not conducive for the long-term health of the business, right?
Right.
This is where the most butting of heads happens at an ecom org, in my experience, is like a revenue number and a spend number just gets thrown on in a spreadsheet with like no real rationale behind it. It's like this is the numbers that we want because it backs into the P&L and the bottom line we want. In my experience, this is where most of the friction between the growth team, the marketing team, and like the people who ultimately own the P&L at the end of the year come from. So if you can create a sense of understanding between the relationship in media spend and revenue growth and efficiency trends, like you're gonna have a much harder time. I think like invest in the time it takes to kind of educate the finance department on like the relationship between revenue and media and acquisition costs. Like it is so well worth it to save you hours and hours of like just talking in circles down the line.
I think at Ridge, it's one of like the main reasons for our success is just like complete alignment around the last 6 years. We've been like, look, results are only going to get worse. We have a highly customer acquisition oriented business. It's only going to get more expensive. We're going to forecast that literally every single year. MER has gone down, but the business has gotten bigger. And because of that, we built the entire organization to support a technically less efficient business at the top line level.
Yep.
So just like that sort of singular focus has been extremely valuable.
Connor, we probably have a really similar business structure to you guys in terms of like that acquisition and designing the P&L. We're just like at like 10% of the scale. You know what I mean? Yeah. So very interesting.
Yeah, because you guys both run your businesses at a very, just because you have great landed margins, like you guys both run your businesses at a very low blended MER, right?
Yeah. And then, I mean, as it relates to She's Birdie, one of the other reasons is like, frankly, the wallet business has hit in many ways a saturation point in D2C. Like I mentioned earlier in the pod, like we've seen growth, we continue to see growth, but it's a lot smaller than we've seen in the past because we are not at the point where we can spend another 40% and actually be generating more profit. So the way Ridge has grown is actually just launching new businesses and then running those in the same way. Rings looks very similar for the last 3 years. Same with travel, same with like all the other things that we've launched. So maybe She's Birdie has something in the cards there. Just more product launches, more category launches.
100%.
All right, that's about an hour 20. That was one of the longer ones we've done in a while.
That was super fun. And Richie, thanks for joining and jamming on BFCM too.
It'd be fun even, Richie, to like anonymize some numbers at some point and almost have you come on and like screen share and be like, this is how a bottoms up forecast looks and works, like, and actually talk through it with real numbers. That'd be pretty cool.
I mean, we could do a birdie forecast, unanonymized.
Let's do it, man. I'm down. That'd be fun.
Yeah, okay.
I think our audience would love that.
Yeah. Dude, you guys are the best. You guys are so smart. I listen to yours all the time, so it's fun to be on.
Dude, appreciate it.
Thanks for coming.
Awesome.
All right, that's a wrap on episode with Richie Mashiko. Had some really good recap on Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and had some really thoughtful and helpful advice on how to go about forecasting for an e-commerce brand. Thank you to the sponsors, Motion, Aftercell, Prescient, Rich Panel, and House. And if you're liking the show, make sure to comment, like, subscribe, and share with all your marketing friends.